Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Her Faith Inspires podcast, where we take cultural issues and we tackle them with biblical truth. I got a question from someone who wanted to know about celebrity worship culture in America and why so many Christians flock to see the new Barbie movie. I thought I'd combine that question with another question. Should Christians boycott Hollywood? Because I was already going to tackle this anyway after a few thoughts over the release of the new Barbie movie. So I am really excited to talk about this today. This question comes from Tina, and she left a review on iTunes if you want to go back and read it. Tina, I do appreciate you taking the time to write the review, and I did read it. Obviously, that's why I'm making this podcast episode in response to that. And I'm very grateful for it. So if you enjoy the podcast, those of you that are listening, please leave a 5-star rating and review, as that is how we get the podcast into the earbuds of others. And again, this is going to be a jam-packed episode. And the things that we're going to talk about today, I could probably make a full episode off of each point, but we're going to put it all into one because it kind of goes together. It's all good things. So let's do this. I want to let you know about 2 upcoming conferences for next month, the month of September. One of them is online and one of them is in person at the Pickens Baptist Church. Now, I'm having a little bit of trouble getting those links right now, but I will have them in my events page on my website where you can see the calendar as soon as I get the links that are live. So you can sign up. I'll keep you posted on my social media accounts and even on future podcast episodes as to where to go and where to find them. If you're in the upstate area of South Carolina, I'd love to meet you in person at the Pickens Women's event on September 23rd. It's only from 10 to 2, $20, and you get Chick-fil-A. What more could you ask for? So keep an eye out for that. Okay, here's what we're going to discuss in this episode. First, why did so many Christians flock to see the new Barbie movie? 2, should Christians boycott Hollywood? And finally, what is up with the Christian celebrity culture? These could quite possibly be an episode on their own, but I'm going to do my best to tackle all 3 of these and, of course, come at them from a biblical view, because who needs my opinion, right? The Bible is our authority, and what it says we have to abide by, because it is the word of God. We have to base our decisions on the guidance from the word. Now, that doesn't mean we have to over spiritualize things, and I highly suggest that we don't do that. But when it comes to what we expose ourselves to, we have to be careful. We have to be discerning, and we have to think critically through it. To be honest, I was not going to see the Barbie movie. I was like not giving Hollywood my money on this, because I already had an idea that it was all going to be feminism and things like that. There was so much controversy surrounding this movie, and I'm kind of like, wow, why? Well, why Barbie? I mean, I get it, but still, like, why Barbie and not other ones? There was some around the Sound of Freedom too. I just was kind of surprised with how much noise there's been surrounding Barbie. So I just didn't want to be another voice in this noisy crowd of voices. To be honest, like, you guys don't need to hear another Barbie review. I'm sure you've heard them, you've read them, you've seen them. Why do you need Shanda to give it to you? So I've seen reviews from everyone. Like, Ben Shapiro was the first one that I saw. And then I heard the cross-examine review with all of the lady apologists that were at CIA. Then I read the Salvo magazine review and I shared that to my Facebook page. But then I thought to myself, if I don't see this movie, I can't really speak for or against it in honesty, right? I shouldn't even be sharing a review on it, because I can't confirm whether or not that review is honest, like somebody else's review, sharing someone else's. I can't do that honestly because I haven't seen it. I don't know if they're right or they're wrong. Now, I'm not saying that we all have to see every movie so we can give our opinion on it. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that since there was a lot of controversy surrounding this movie, I could not give an unbiased opinion on it without seeing it. For that reason, I gave in out of curiosity, not because I felt forced to, but I was like, what's the hullabaloo all about? And that's why I decided to go see it. I talked my sister-in-law into going to see it with me, and we got like a Tuesday deal, $5.25. How can you pass it up? So I didn't give Hollywood a lot. I didn't even buy popcorn or drinks because they put too much butter on that popcorn anyway, but it was still Tuesday deal. We went. I'll share more on that in a bit, but this is not meant to be like a review of that movie. As I said, there are already a ton of reviews. You can go watch, you can go read if you want to. The question in the review of my podcast on Apple is, why did so many Christians flock to see the Barbie movie? I honestly don't know how many Christians have seen it. I actually researched that, and I couldn't find like a hard number. It's probably what you're seeing, Tina, if she's listening to this, is probably seeing a lot of people's posts or something on Facebook, Instagram, social media in general. And I know some churches like Saddleback Church and other churches are doing like movies in the church, or church at the movies, something to that degree, where they also dressed up and had Barbie stuff. So it looks like Christians are bringing Barbie into their churches, which I will say a little bit about that in a minute. As of right now, Barbie's still playing at the movies. So that number is going to continue to rise. It's doing great at the box office. So I don't know how many Christians have seen it, but I can say this: with 65% of Americans who claim to be Christian, I would say a lot of people who call themselves Christians help put it in the category of like the box office hit, just by this statistic. That makes sense. So with that said, I do have some information on how Christians reviewed this movie after they saw it, even though I don't know exactly how many Christians went to see it. A lot of people I know aren't seeing it, and those that did reviewed it. So it just depends upon their purpose. I don't know of any personally that are going to see it for entertainment purposes. But a Mother's Random Thoughts blog page says this: overall, this is a visually pretty movie, but some of the content is too adult for children. However, the themes of women running everything versus men running everything, and seeing that things aren't perfect in Barbie Land and they aren't perfect in the real world, is an overall good message. I left the link to that whole blog post. If you want to go back and read it, you can do that. And then there's a pastor out of Tennessee who said the movie's demonic and warned parents not to take their kids to see it because he had a bad dream about it, he says, and he had a dream that it was like demonically influencing kids. And he says, if you do go take your kids, don't be surprised if they start acting different, basically saying they'll either be demon possessed or oppressed and act differently. You can take that for what it's worth. I've seen the movie, and I would say that I don't agree with that, but I'll tell you why in a little bit. I'm just trying not to give away like all my opinions and you guys be like, click, we're turning her off. But feel free to keep listening and disagree with me as we go along. So as you can see, there are differing opinions on the message of the movie and whether or not Christians should see it. Here's my opinion, my take on this whole Christians and Barbie. Let me go back to what I think the underlying problem is here. Regardless of whether or not you see the movie, Barna's American Worldview Inventory for 2021-2022 tells us that 65% of Americans claim to be Christian, while only 6% have a biblical worldview. If you don't remember this stat and me dropping it like a hot potato at the beginning of 2023, go back and listen to all those worldview episodes that I believe started in January. I don't have the numbers in front of me because I didn't write this in my notes, but you will see that I went through all of them and gave the statistics per Barna's American Worldview Inventory, which is super interesting. So I think a lot of what people say they believe and what they really act on conflict. And so they go, and I think that's why a lot of them probably just went and saw Barbie. Second, I think a lot of people love Barbie. Now, I think that you're probably going to be maybe in your 30s on up to really love Barbie. And for that reason, they watched it because it's nostalgic. Now, I will say the older teens in my family went and saw it, and they said it was weird. Like all the kids in my family that are teenagers were just like, this movie's weird. I don't know that they're that into Barbie. I don't know that they were that into Barbie. You know, I have 3 nieces. I have 2 smaller nieces, younger ones. I don't know that any of them are currently into Barbie. Maybe the younger ones will be after this, but the teenage ones are just like, it's a weird movie. So Gen Z, I don't think is digging it as much as like Gen X and maybe the millennials. It was popular, Barbie was, when I was a kid, but these kids aren't going to get the 80s, 90s themed references to Barbie like we do. The Bible tells us we are to be in the world, but not of the world. So I'm going to use this whole context as the foundation of the biblical view, hopefully, for the rest of what I'm going to say. And that's that's in John 17:11-17. So let's just read that first. Jesus says, I will remain in the world no longer, but they are still in the world, and I am coming to you. Holy Father, protect them by the power of your name, the name you gave me, so that they may be one as we are one. While I was with them, I protected them and kept them safe by that name you gave me. None has been lost except the one doomed to destruction, so that scripture would be fulfilled. I am coming to you now, but I say these things while I am still in the world, so that they may have the full measure of my joy within them. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them, for they are not of the world any more than I am of the world. My prayer is not that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one. They are not of the world, even as I am not of it. Sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. So let's just notice a few things in this passage. Jesus is praying to the Father, and he says, we are not of this world, but we are still in it. He's asking the Father to keep us from the evil one, to protect us while we are in it. And in verse 15, Jesus said that he's not asking that the Father takes us out of the world, but that he keeps us from the evil one while we're here. Finally, he asks that the Father sanctifies us. And to sanctify is to make holy and set apart, meaning that we're different, that we look different, that we act different, that we believe different, reflect different views and beliefs than the culture. So, of course, we're going to be at odds with the culture just based upon that whole sanctification process. The real question is, can you go to the movies and still be different and set apart? So again, we have to realize that we're in this world and not of this world. Everybody's heard that. They all know it. You know it. But the premise is Jesus isn't asking the Father to take us out of the world. He's asking that he keeps us while we're here. And that means we also have to be careful how we navigate the world. Here's what I think about, can you go to the movies and still be different or set apart? When I was studying for my certificate in apologetics through Biola, I believe it was JP Moreland. I was actually wondering about my notes and I just didn't dig them out, but I'm pretty sure it was JP Moreland who said that Christians dominated every form of art, literature, music, and education in the early 1900s. And Jim Wallace talks about this in his latest book, Person of Interest. JP Moreland said was that because the movie industry portrayed these secular movies that align to the culture, Christians lost their influence because they pulled out. Christians are like, oh, we're not going to be a part of that. They were dominating art, literature, music, and education and entertainment, but they didn't like what secular culture was promoting with movies, so they lost their influence in the movie industry and instead started boycotting Hollywood. And mastermedia.com, I am leaving that article in the show notes as well, said that as World War II ended, the mid-1940s brought a change in the cultural wind. As American soldiers returned home from Europe and the Pacific and foreign films entered the U.S. marketplace, new ideologies began to take root. Seeds of secularism were planted, often blooming on the screens of local theaters. So how did Christians respond? Some panicked. Some pulled out. Some stopped going to the movies under the conviction, what business does a Christian have being in a dark theater? And perhaps the most detrimental fruit of our response, a generation of talented young creatives were discouraged by many, even condemned by some from entering the media business. As the church relinquished the responsibility of creating or supporting positive, life-affirming films, the secular film culture filled the void. So let's move on to the second question. Should Christians boycott Hollywood? No, they shouldn't. And here's why. We just heard that Christians were a part of the movie industry. They're a part of entertainment. They were leading in art and education. And somehow we bowed out of all that because we said we just can't be a part of it. It's too evil. And we pulled back everything, including our influence. We don't dominate those areas anymore. And so John 17, the text tells us we're in the world, but we're not of it. We don't do it the same way. We don't portray art in the same way as the world does. We don't portray music in the same way that the world does, but we still have music. We have lots of good Christian music, but we're not dominating the music industry. How do we balance being in the world, but not of the world? There will always be a tension between living in the world and not being of the world. Christians do not dominate the area of art, literature, music, and movies anymore. We're called to have our finger on the pulse of culture, and being a hermit crab and burying our heads in the sand isn't working. We're not accomplishing anything. And some will argue and say that we're not here to fight the culture war. Okay, I agree. But I will say that your life as a Christian will naturally clash with the culture because darkness and light do not mix. So you can say all you want that we are not here to fight a culture war. However, I would say your very life as a Christian will put you at the center of the battle. As I listened to and even shared a post on the Barbie movie, I made a decision to go and see it. And my sister-in-law and I decided to go together because here's the way I use secular movies personally. I like to watch them and identify the worldview in them. I do this with my boys all the time, and I ask them to identify what the worldview is. I knew Barbie was absolutely pushing feminism. Every problem is in a movie, every problem presented is going to have a solution based on the worldview that movie promotes, even a book, even music. Movies are an excellent teaching tool because they do several things. First, they teach you and your kids to think critically through entertainment without automatically buying in and allowing your mind to be formed by it. I can't say enough about how powerful a teaching tool this is, especially with kids who are on technology all the time. I don't think every Hollywood movie that's ever produced should be watched. There are a lot I never see. There are a lot I don't allow my boys to see, especially if they're dirty and crude. We always go look up the rating, we look up what's in it, and we look up how things are portrayed. And then we make a decision to either watch it or not based upon that, usually going through like commonsensemedia.com. Secondly, if you're teaching worldviews and different belief system, when you watch them through things like entertainment or books or music and even art, things like that, you're allowing your children to critically think through these differing worldviews and to see how those big worldview questions are being answered. Like, how did we get here? What's my purpose? What's the problem of evil? Where do I go when I die? Every worldview has to answer that. So if we're putting these things in front of them, I mean, Barbie talked about death. She was worried about dying. They talked about the roles of men and women. They even had a reference to an objective moral standard, which we're going to get into in a minute. There's a lot of teaching tools through this and questions that you can navigate to have your kids evaluate the differing worldviews. And that makes their belief in Christianity stronger when they know why they choose to believe in God, why the evidence that we examine and how the world operates points to God's existence. And then finally, movies help us keep our finger on the pulse of culture, and then you can add your voice to the conversation. I personally felt a little bit like hypocritical when I shared the article from Salvo because I had not seen the movie to confirm that what Salvo said was actually a true representation of the movie. However, Salvo's assessment was filled with examples from the movie, so they backed up what they said, and I knew that they represented it well. And it was such a great article. I'm going to link it in the show notes for you to read it because, again, it's that good. One of the best reviews I've seen. And I've had a couple people on from Salvo. I've had Tara and I've had Emily Morales. So they've been very great guests to have on, very knowledgeable. Salvo does a great job. But here's the thing. I'm an apologist. I believe in providing evidence and reasons for your position, and this is no different, right? I don't know how Christians who do not see the movie can give an honest review of the movie, can say, oh, this is what it's about and this is what it promotes. You can say, this is what I heard it's about. This is what I heard it promotes based upon the things I read. You can say it that way, of course, and that's honest. But to say, I'm not going to see it because it's this, this, and that, we have to be careful how we word it. But I do see how those who have not seen the movie can decide not to see it based on the information that they get from other reviews. That's what I do when I look at Common Sense Media. So I'm talking about two different avenues. Are we trying to give an honest review of it? You can't unless you see it. But are you making a decision based upon other reviews that you've read? I think that's an informed decision, right? So what am I saying altogether? I'm saying this comes down to discernment and how you will use the information from the movie itself. Is isolation the best way to be the light in a dark world? I don't think so, but we should always approach what we're going to filter through our minds with discernment before we do it. As far as Barbie is concerned, after seeing it, it's exactly what you would expect from Hollywood. It's all feminism, and the director, Greta Gerwig, admits it. No surprise there. I thought most of the reviews I saw were hypercritical. My sister-in-law and I both found it entertaining and funny, and we both agree that the most offensive part of the movie was the sexual innuendos. I mean, I hate sexual innuendos and crude and rude language. And I'm just like, why? Why do it? You're reducing the message to crude and rude jokes that make it shallow. But since most of those innuendos were from the men in the movie, maybe that was done purposely to prove, Greta's point about men being shallow and whatever she thought of them. But as far as people being hypercritical of the movie, in my opinion, my question is this: where do you draw the line with your criticism? Are you boycotting all movies or just this one? Do you review all movies or just this one? And does it end here, or are you boycotting music that has secular messages? I think when we as Christians are critical of everything, or even if we're choosy, we're picking and choosing what we're critical about, but not others, it doesn't make sense because our standard isn't the same across the board. And then we lose the impact of our message because we're criticizing everything, or we're only criticizing some things, but not others. And you're like, what makes you decide? It doesn't make sense to me to go crazy about this movie and not others. Like there's a lot of other movies that we can be just as critical of, but we haven't been, because there's a lot of really dumb movies out there that come from a non-biblical worldview. But again, I think Barbie is part of a hot topic because we have this, Andrew Tate's, we have these men that are like these masculine men of culture that a lot of men are flocking to. And then we have feminism where they're kind of at odds against each other. And this movie is just a perfect depiction of the culture at the moment. But what do you expect from Hollywood? They're anti-God. They're not coming at you from a biblical worldview. I do not expect them to have great and wholesome messages in their movies. And that means not just Barbie, anything produced and written from Hollywood itself. So here is what I and my sister-in-law thought of the movie Barbie. I know you're already getting some of that woven in throughout the previous parts of this episode. But even if you even care for another small little review, I don't think this movie is fit for young kids. I agree with what I believe every critic is saying. It's not, it's not for younger kids, but I do think it's a great conversation piece between teens and others examining worldviews. As I've already said, I am a teacher and I do this with my own kids. So that's what I would use this movie for. I have a 13-year-old. He's not going to see the movie because of the innuendos. He already knows we talk about feminism and masculinism and biblical manhood, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not worried about that. I just don't want him to hear the innuendos. I think that they're the worst part of the movie, which they're the worst part of all movies when they're PG-13 or R. I think there are questions that you can critically think through, such as when one of the Barbies in Barbie Land says, "I don't make the rules, Mattel does." It shows they acknowledge a moral objective standard. And what's funny is it's a question that every worldview has to answer about truth and morality. So again, that's what I would point out as a Christian apologist examining worldviews with my kids. Like, who makes the rules? And in this movie, they're treating Mattel like God. It's interesting to me, but again, I'm weird like that. Also, I don't like America Ferrera's monologue. I don't see the expectations of women in society the way that she does. They seem very depressed, unhappy, angry. And it's like, wow, if feminism's working for you, why are you so upset? Like, why are you so, I would say they're bitter and just crass. The world may have been like what she describes in the 40s, but is it like that now? What are the roles of men and women? My sister-in-law said this. She's a complete girl mom. I am a boy mom. Her girls are the same age as my boys, exactly, except for her youngest girl is a year older than my youngest. So we have 3 boys. I have 3 boys. She has 3 girls. So coming at this from a boy mom, I can see one of my boys, he's 20. He saw the movie and he's like, typical Hollywood. They portrayed men as complete, these the patriarchy, and they're crude and they're rude, and they, slap women on the butt and stuff like that. So he was offended by how they portrayed men because he's not like that. But I wanted to get a girl mom's perspective. And that's why I appreciated that she came. And she said, being a girl mom, I could relate to encouraging girls to pursue whatever dreams they have, regardless of what it is. If they want to be a president, then go for it. Doctor, soldier, engineer, construction worker, the sky's the limit. I did see that there was some talk about the quote unquote real world being a man's world. And for me, I just don't see that as much anymore. In fact, women in the workplace get more preferential treatment, and women-owned businesses get tax breaks and accolades. There were stereotypes of men catcalling, other things that made men seem awful, but that is not true of all men. I am a mom who doesn't try too hard to keep my kids in a bubble, within reason, obviously. I believe in teaching them and showing them before the world does. I believe that there has to be a maturity level within your children too. My daughters are older, but I still don't like them to see scary movies, especially demonic ones, because I know what they can handle and what they can't. Okay, so that was our take on the movie. You can love it, you can hate it, but that's the beauty in having an opinion, right? And again, I'm a boy mom, she's a girl mom, and that was our perspective of the Barbie movie. Again, I wouldn't take my young daughters to see it. Anyone under the age of like 14, I just wouldn't, maybe even 15, 16 on up. I would say, let's go and have a conversation about it. Finally, what is up with the Christian celebrity culture? Let me just put it this way and make it really easy. It's a thing in the West, because you're not going to find Christians in the Middle East with a, heavy following who are risking their lives for Jesus, or in other parts of the country, of the world, where they're risking their lives to preach the gospel. It's because we can here in the West. I have a lot to say about Christian celebrity culture because it annoys me. And here's the thing, I have to be careful with it because I run my ministry through social media and podcasts and a YouTube channel. That is not the way that we do effective discipleship. I just want to say that now. We do that because in the West, this is a tool to use to hopefully evangelize. And if every Christian pulled out of social media, if every Christian pulled off of YouTube, then guess what? We've handed over the most effective way that the culture receives its information to a secular world, and we're going to lose our influence just like we did in Hollywood, right? So social media is a tool. But with that said, it's what makes celebrity culture. And here's the deal. No one is immune to it. We all run the risk of it because it's that age-old lie that the enemy sold even in the garden. You can be like God. A lot of times when I see people talking about Genesis 3, they always highlight, did God really say? And that's part of this. But we're forgetting that first part. You can be like God. You can be like God is the autonomy, is you being the one who sets yourself up. The enemy wanted to set his throne above God's, and we do it too. So just know that we are all prone to that celebrity culture of lifting up others and lifting up ourselves, or not even lifting up others. We're looking to others to sometimes be the one to tell us. I get emails from people asking for advice, and I don't mind answering it, but I told someone today in an email response, I'm not God. I can only point you back to the scriptures because it's my authority too. The Bible is my authority. I'm struggling. I struggle with my own things. I don't have it all together. And we can see someone on platforms and think that they do have it all together because we don't really know them. Just like you guys don't really know me and my struggles. So just understand that it's in all of us to be tempted with the words, you can be like God. And that's where we get Christian celebrity culture. Also, this is bred again by social media. I called someone the other day to talk to them about our new curriculum, just to walk them through it. He had some questions and he's like, oh my, it's Shanda. I'm so honored. And he was very nice and kind, but he heard me on Frank Turk's podcast, and thought I was some big deal. I'm not a big deal, like at all. And here's the thing is that why do we think that those on the other side of the screen are big deals? Because we don't know them. We do not know them. You do not know me personally. You only know what I say once a week for 35, 40 minutes on a podcast. Don't get roped into that. Andy Crouch has this great book, and we're studying it right now. It's called Tech Wise. And we're studying this with a core group at church. And he said that we view those we don't know on social media as some big thing because they're not in the room with us. They have like this screen that's keeping them from us and us from them. And the screen is the medium. That's why it's called social media. It's the mediator between you and that other person, which really keeps you from building a relationship. Is it good? Yeah, there's some benefits to it for sure. But it also can make us think that we know the people and we really don't. They become untouchable. Their follow list is long and their posts seem authoritative because they have a platform where they establish themselves as the expert. But that's only because you don't know them. So let that sink in. You don't know them. On the flip side, that also makes it easy to fire back at people and say things you wouldn't say in person because you can be snarky and rude and say things because they can't do anything. They're not there because they don't know them and you don't know them and they don't know you. Christians aren't supposed to build their own kingdom. They're not supposed to make themselves great. We are to lift up the name of Jesus, not our own. And being on this side of things, I know that it's sometimes hard to balance that because you're always promoting your thoughts about things or your videos or your curriculum and all the things that I do, right? I'm promoting it. So it's self-promotion in some ways. And you're like balancing that. And I have to check myself daily and more so lately that I do not get caught up in the pool of building my own name. And really that's all celebrity Christian culture is. It's your name in lights rather than lifting the name of Jesus. So here's what I do personally when I'm around people who are quote unquote celebrities in the Christian world, because in reality, there are no Christian celebrities. I mean, we think that there are, but there aren't. And so I'm just going to tell you what I do. You can do what you can do what you want with this. I don't treat them differently. I don't ask them for their autograph. I just don't. Now, if it's to sign a book, sure, sign my book. But I don't ask them for autographs or anything. That's ridiculous. Second, I don't take very many pictures with them, if any, when I'm around them. You probably don't even know sometimes when I'm around the people that I am because I don't take pictures with them because I'm not going to act like they're the big thing. That's not fair to them either because they're not a big thing. They're people. And then thirdly, I don't follow them around and loiter in their space like, oh, I get to hang out with you. I just don't do it. Why don't I do this? Because I don't want to treat them any different than any other human being. They're not famous. They're not celebrities. They're Christians who provide great information, great discipleship truths, great things about the Bible. And thank God that we have those people who are willing to put their name on the line on social media because it's going to get more and more difficult to do that. But they're not celebrities. They're flawed like you and me. Every celebrity in Hollywood is too. Obviously, you know that, but we're talking about Christian celebrities. They're not here to lift their name. They're here to lift the name of Jesus. That's all of our purpose, whether you're on social media, whether you're at home, whether you're in the Middle East, no matter where we are as Christians, we all are here to lift the name of Jesus. We just have the honor to do it and the privilege and hopefully the great responsibility to do it correctly through the tools that God has given to us. So the only time I'll write my name for someone is if I'm signing a book that I wrote. I'm not going to give anybody an autograph. That's dumb. And we shouldn't be looking for that from other people. So keep things into perspective. You can't control how people act, but you can control how you view them. We're not going to slow down Christian celebrity culture. There are mega churches out there where the pastor comes out from behind the curtain and he doesn't worship with the people. If you can't do that as a pastor, your church is too big because you should not be coming out from behind a curtain. The pastor shouldn't be wearing, I guess it'd be debatable, like $1,000 shoes and, these, why? Like, where are we putting our money? Anyways, I can go on. I don't want to be like too harpy on this. But Christian celebrity culture is a thing in the West, and it's a problem. It really is. But we can't control that. We can't control how people act. We can't control how people view other people, but we can control how we view them. And we can control how we hopefully portray ourselves. Don't put anyone on a pedestal. And honestly, they're going to disappoint you and it's not fair to them. If you're putting someone on a pedestal and treating them like a celebrity, it's not fair to that person because I'm sure they're struggling with making sure that they're building God's kingdom and not their own. Christianity always has a price. You will not be a celebrity Christian. And if you are, it's going to be very hard not to allow it to get to your head and affect your heart if you stay there for long. I think we need to be careful how we view this and how we quote unquote headline speakers, even when we're having an event from our church. Just be careful how you headline that person. Don't make more of a man than you do Jesus. Whether it's you or someone else, don't make more of a man than you do Jesus. I feel like I babbled on that part with Christian celebrity culture, but it's so anti-Christian. Because Jesus said, if they hate me, they will hate you too. And if we are changing the message to get the people in, then we're not sticking to the authority of scripture. If we're not being hated by the world, I don't want to say that if you don't have all these people hating you, you're not doing something right. But I will say, if you're speaking the truth of God's word, they're going to hate you. We're going to lose, right? So keep that in mind. And listen to what these celebrity pastors have to say. There's a reason that they are able to attract the people that they attract. The crowds will follow the things that tickle their ears. So I want to close this out today by saying this. I said a lot of things here that you might not agree with, and that's okay. You may be adamant that you don't want to go see the Barbie movie. Don't go watch it. I'm not telling you that you have to. I am not advocating for you to go watch all the movies Hollywood promotes. I'm not saying that. And if you do, you'll always need discernment to make sure you're not putting something into your mind that impacts your heart, because whatever enters your heart is first filtered through the mind. Don't forget that. I am saying that we can be a bit too critical and we can push ourselves out of the influence of the culture because everything is just too quote unquote evil. Be careful not to jump on that bandwagon very easily. Just try not to do that. And finally, I want to say this. When the whole Asbury Revival thing broke out, I think it was like last year, there was a ton of people talking about that. And I told myself, you're not adding your voice to this. Like, I had an opinion on it, but it was super simple. Usually that's my opinion. My opinion comes down to something super simple. With Barbie, I'm just like, don't be too critical. Be careful, use discernment. But if you're going to judge Barbie, judge what every movie from Hollywood. Okay, simple. But when it came to Asbury, I was like, there are so many people talking about it, so many people giving critiques. And my whole view came down to this. I don't know if it's from God or not. I'm not there. I can't give a good opinion, an honest opinion about it. But I can refer you back to Acts 5:39, when the disciples are telling and preaching about Jesus and they get pulled in and they're told not to talk about him anymore. And one of the religious leaders says, look, if this is from God, you can't stop it. And if it's not from God, it's going to fizzle out. And that's what I said about Asbury. I don't know if it's from God or not, but if it is, you won't stop it. And if it's not from God, it'll fizzle out. I'm sure that there were some sincere people at Asbury. There's probably some hyper emotional people there at Asbury, or people who just wanted to see what was going on. Either way, the ones that were there from God, they'll continue. And the ones that are not will fizzle out. Just don't be so hypercritical about it. It's not an all or nothing sometimes. Sometimes you just got to use discernment and make the best decision as you move forward. If you have any questions for me, you can email me at hello@shandafulbright.com. Till then, I'll catch you on the next one.